Welcome back, everyone, to another week of writing. We have big updates this week. I wrote my first short story and sent it. It is out into the ether, into the email ether, waiting for affirmation or rejection. What an exciting thing. We're talking about some excellent masterpiece grade short stories by one of the great short story writers of all time. He's from the Czech Republic. They make adjectives around him that end with esque. You know who I'm talking about. Last but not least, we are going to talk about writing the other, how to write characters who are people unlike yourself in the many different ways that we identify as human beings in 2025. What does that look like? Whether to do it or not, how to do it if you're going to do it, and what it means to be a responsible writer on this front. Welcome back. What a thing. What a time. I'm Asa Merritt. I wrote 6 sermons, the Audible original starring Stephanie Shu. And on these weekly videos, I talk about my writing updates, what I'm reading and what I'm learning from that reading. And then lastly, there's always kind of a writing tip or educational piece that we can all put to use in our writing, something that I learned this week as well. Welcome. Writing updates. The big thing on the list, wow, we need a balloon or a banner or a sound effect, is that I submitted my very first short story this week. It is a piece of flash fiction. I submitted this to the Smokehouse Quarterly, and gosh, it feels good. It feels good just to send something out. I can already feel the waves of rejection letters coming back from this first push or not, but that is the big win of the week. As you know, on this channel, I have big goals about submitting lots of short stories, reading lots of short stories, publishing them one day. And so getting this out into the ether was a big step. It felt like my writing, it felt true, it felt not boring, as I told a peer, up to date. I had been writing kind of drafts of things that I thought were serviceable, were competent, that told a story that had a beginning and an end and character, all these kind of elements, but missing this kind of the juice, the me, the Asa in it. And I feel like this little story, whatever flaws it may or may not have, has that. And so that was a huge achievement. Other writing updates, I want to share again that micro goals really characterize where I'm at right now as a writer. I'm trying to sit down every day. I've got this adage, write 1 sentence a day. And it's just helping a lot to really make these goals minimum, to say, hey, you know what, you can submit flash fiction, not a short story, that's fine. Making these goals as granular as possible, as small as possible, has just taken the pressure off, and it's seeing results, right? I sent something out. So how cool is that? And I really credit kind of just getting super granular. What am I doing today? And so to share those goals once again, it's write 1 sentence a day, read 2 short stories a day. Those goals can be achieved within an hour and a half, and it's really working. On the reading front, let me bring your attention to The Burrow. The Burrow is Franz Kafka's last short story, technically his penultimate, but for all intents and purposes, his last major work that he wrote before he died. My theater friends, Drew Valens and Michaela Lind, were in town this week from New York City to workshop an adaptation of The Burrow. They came all week down here in Mexico to workshop the piece. I was there helping them, overhearing this performed oral version of The Burrow time and time again. And it's just an incredible work of fiction. It really showcases Kafka's ability to capture our neuroses, anxiety, the elliptical quality of the text of the story, the nature of the character. It's this rodent underground who can't see, who can only really hear. I mean, he can see, but he's just limited in his capacity to perceive the world around him. He's constantly getting it wrong, just like we do. And specifically, as this was written on Kafka's deathbed, you can really feel it. This character's anxiety has reached an existential level, and it's all sort of displayed through this extended metaphor of the burrow. This creature lives in a burrow under the ground. They have provisions, they have food stores, they have defenses, fortifications against invaders. It's this really delicious, exquisite, hour-long metaphor that achieves a lasting effect. It stays with you, which all great work does. What a read. I recommend it. Additionally, just to give this little piece of art some airtime in the universe, there is a very short story that Kafka wrote called The Vulture. I'm just going to put it up here so that you can hit pause and read this exquisite little piece of literature. What an amazing piece. It tracks this man's encounter with a vulture. He's being eaten by the vulture on the side of the road. A stranger comes by. It turns out that the vulture is listening. We have this delicious surrealism moment right in the middle of the story that just takes the initial kind of conflict of a person being eaten by a vulture, amplifies it up to this whole other level. That happens just a few hundred words in, and then the ending is this additional complete reversal where just the vulture perishes in this wild, expansive, surprising way. So that's my second Kafka rec. The most important part of this video, perhaps, some quick hits, some quick tips on how to write the other. What do we mean by the other? We mean people who are different than ourselves, folks of a different ethnicity, sexuality, gender, ability. I'm deaf in one ear. This is something that is special of mine, that is different. All these things that make us different. How to write somebody who is not like you, how to do it responsibly, whether to do it or not, that is a big question that folks have. These are some of the things that I was thinking about when I was taking this week's lecture of the life writing course. This is a year-long kind of educational program taught by the Afrofuturist Tananrive Due and Stephen Barnes. And I recommend this class. They brought on two writers, one of which who authored a book called Writing the Other. There are lots of vast resources out there. The next 3 minutes of this YouTube video will not suffice, but I did personally want to share some of the things that I took away from this video. I think this is like an essential conversation, writing the other. And I think kind of for me, one of the biggest takeaways, or really an affirmation of something that I already believe, is that there's no excuse for not including a diverse group of perspective, point of views, characters, voices in your work, that we have an obligation to represent the world in all its multitudes, and that the sentiment of, well, I don't want to get anything wrong, so I'm going to leave out character of this, or this, because I am not, that is a cop-out. And one needs to do better. So that was my kind of first insight. It's like, you know what? Do the work to include folks who aren't like yourselves in your stories. What does that work look like? Well, the best thing that you can do is to ask questions, to research, to consult both sort of indirectly and directly the kinds of folks, people, groups that you're trying to represent, to engage with people who have lived experience, to find folks who can read your work, sensitivity readers, to offer you perspective, to clarify, shed light on the blind spots that you might have from your own experience. And then to actually listen to the folks that you speak to. This was a point that was made that, people will go through the work of getting a sensitivity reader and then disagree with them or argue with them or disregard what they're saying, and that's all for naught. Additionally, there are just some sort of talking points that were shared during this lecture that I thought were really valuable. Difference is not monolithic, which is to say that whatever separates you from the other people gives you license to understand their difference. This seems obvious, but it's important to kind of have this difference is not monolithic. Engage with each kind of difference in a way that does service to that difference as much as possible. And if you're writing a character who is other, recognize, remember that we are all contain multitudes, that what other it is that they are in your story, that is not exclusively who they are. Think deeply, think in terms of intersectionality, consider all the which ways in which folks are othered in this world, whether it be gender, sexuality, race, ability. There's just so many ways that make us separate, and that only by sort of holding all these things in your mind at once can you write justly with a sense of equity. And I love that. Anyway, it's great stuff. This is just sort of my again, the gleanings that I had from this little talk, but I definitely recommend it. An announcement on the announcements front. Dominique Taylor and I, the short fiction writer behind the Townsend Inn Chronicles, she's amazing. Follow her on Substack. Her and I are going to start rocking and rolling here on YouTube and workshopping our own short fiction. Stay tuned for that. The first meeting will be Friday, July 4th. midday in the US time zones. We're looking at, I think, 1 or noon EST. I'll get back to you on that. Till next time.